Welcome everyone to Meditation Mount. And this is the second global gathering we've had that we're calling View from the Mount. And it's an opportunity to explore some of the spiritual underpinnings of our work here at the Mount. Last month, we explored the pathways and principles, and I will very, very briefly recap those in a moment. But the first thing is to welcome each of us to this gathering. We are all in different geographical locations of the world, and yet we share one common space. That common space is the space that we call the group heart or the group soul. And so we are present with each other, even though we may not be physically present. So let us visualize all of the people on this particular call linked by lines of lighted energy. And visualize a beam of love and light going from your heart to the hearts of all the people gathered today. This is our network. This is our field in which we will explore. I'd like to begin with a poem by Rilke, because it sets the tone. You must give birth to your images. They are the future waiting to be born. Fear not the strangeness you feel. The future must enter you long before it happens. Just wait for the birth, for the hour of new clarity. What Rilke touches on is the power of images or the power of imagination. And we can see imagination as that mercurial messenger that connects heaven and earth, connects the invisible with the visible, connects the realm of possibilities with the realm of concrete action and manifestation. So everything that we see around us is the result of thought. The electronic device that you are utilizing at this time, I've got a MacBook Air I'm sitting at. That started off as an idea, an imagination, and then it was designed and it was brought into form. It was given substance, colors were chosen, materials were chosen. And we do that with everything. So wherever you're sitting at the moment, if you're sitting in your own home or with a friend or some other place, just look around, because the furnishings, the colors, the lighting, the decorations, everything in that environment has been created to achieve a certain outcome. And I know that when I create home, I attempt to create on the outside how I feel on the inside. And so today we're going to be looking at creative meditation and how it can help us give birth to our dreams, not just individually, but our collective dreams. Several people have asked, well, why are you calling it creative meditation? Is this some sort of catchy new phrase you've come up with? Is it a marketing phrase? No, actually, creative meditation goes back probably about 100 years. And the books that Alice Bailey wrote, starting probably 100 years ago and then for the next 3-4 decades, contained a lot of understanding and a lot of ancient knowledge on how to use all of our spiritual resources to bring about a specific end, how to carry out and fulfill a spiritual purpose. And so creative meditation is the way in which we create these thought forms, the inner architecture that will then show up on the outside as either a good idea or a computer. There's an ancient axiom that's really important to understand, and it says, energy follows thought. It simply means that wherever we put our thought and focus on it, things happen. And when we don't, things don't happen. So I want to give you an example. I was at a children's birthday party recently, and I was intrigued by soap bubbles. So I want to share with you some soap bubbles and show how these illustrate what I call wishful thinking. So what do we notice about the soap bubbles? Well, they disappeared after a few seconds. And this is what happens often with our own wishes. Is, oh, I wish things were better. Oh, I wish I had this. I wish I had. And then a few seconds later, we've turned our focus to something else. So wishful thinking, if it's not followed through as a spiritual discipline, ends up like a soap bubble. It just bursts. In fact, that's a good thing, because the fact is, with the axiom that energy follows thought, whatever we put our mind to, whatever we deem that we want to create, that comes to pass. And so what we spend a lot of time doing in our lives is clearing up the mess of some of the things that we've created, because we've given it thought, we've given it energy. It may have been charged with a negative emotion. It could be something really positive and good. So whatever we have transmitted and put out in the ethers actually comes to pass. And I believe we're learning that, because if you look around the world at the moment, you can't blame anyone. It's what we collectively have created over thousands of years. And now a number of us, well, quite a number of people are saying, just a minute, is this what we want to create together? And so creative meditation is a way of understanding how to bring about the dreams and the promise of the future. And that's a future that works for everybody. At the moment, when we look around in our society, it doesn't work for everyone. It doesn't care and feed on all levels, spiritual, mental, emotional, or physical. The whole system is not being nourished. So there are a lot of images out there. If we go back to Rilke, you have your image, you've got to allow that image to enter you and to fill you. And then you have to fill it with your substance and bring it to birth. Up until a few months ago, when COVID-19 happened, I spent a lot of time on airplanes. And I would do these surveys every now and again. I'd walk up and down the aisle and just see what were people looking at on their video screen, because most people watch a movie. And I found out that probably up to 80% of the people watching it, and this is not a judgment, this is an observation, were looking at movies that were not just were violent, but what I would call were dystopian. They didn't offer this spark of fiery hope for the future. They weren't feel-good films. They were pretty heavy. Now, that has a role to show the shadow side so that we can acknowledge the world that it is, and then we can make a choice to have it be different. But I thought it was interesting that a lot of people live inside dystopian images. And if it's true that energy follows thought, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So the role of Meditation Mount and other centers like us is for us to seed the ethers with these new seed thoughts. As we saw, the soap bubbles disappeared after a few seconds, they just popped. A seed thought that is focused and charged with a definite purpose and is sent on its way in service of the greater whole, it becomes a magnetic seed. And in that magnetism, it starts to attract to it the elements that give it form and give it shape. And that really is the heart and soul of creative meditation, which we'll be exploring in a moment. So when we say images of the future, this is not just pie in the sky dreaming. This is saying that whatever we want, we need to choose it. We need to live into it. We need to live it. So creative meditation isn't just about putting together a mental construct of the world. We also have to live the qualities that we want into the future so that the thought form that we're creating actually is filled with substance of that vibration. So there's a lot more I could say on that, but I'll say that to another time, because this really today is more of an overview and an engagement with you on the large picture. And our hope is in the coming year is to put on more in-depth online courses on creative meditation. One other example before we go into looking at creative meditation as a toolbox of techniques is I worked for quite a number of years at the Boeing company. And one of the jobs I had was supporting the computing people who were putting together the 777 airplane. Now, the 777 airplane was the first airplane designed at Boeing digitally. It wasn't designed using paper and pen. It was designed using CAD/CAM, computer-aided design, and then computer-aided manufacturing. And so everything was concentrated into this electronic magnetic template. And then all these different seed thoughts and ideas were sent out, and they were then turned into parts. And the parts were assembled and put together. And then one fine day, the airplane flew. And so it's a very similar process. We start with an idea, we start with an inner architecture, and then we have to clothe that architecture. And to the degree that we're skilled in doing that, we can create really beautiful images and beautiful templates that we can then use to build the new civilization with together. It's a very practical thing. It's not just daydreaming. It really is creating, like an architect before a house is built creates a drawing. We're creating the architecture of a preferred future together. And that preferred future, as we saw a month ago, includes these three principles. If we're going to build a new society together, Meditation Mount is saying, consider these three very important principles. One is called essential divinity, saying that everything is sacred. Inside of you, inside of me, inside of everything lives this spark of creation. And therefore we treat everything in a sacred and joyful way, because essentially everything's divine. The other principle is the principle of goodwill, that says that love is the lifeblood of the universe. Love is what courses through our veins, our arteries, what is pumped out by the heart. And the third principle is the principle of unanimity, which says that everything is one coherent, integrated, interdependent whole, one co-resonant field. So if we were to create a future based on the sacredness of all life, the essential divinity, love is the prevailing energy, and love really is just a way in which we care and share together. And then the fact that we understand that we're part of this great web of life, we'd have a very, very different system and a very different society than we have today. So rather than saying this one's bad and what's wrong with it, let's just say we can do better. And Meditation Mount, part of our work is to help people understand that when we build the future, it has to be built on new ground, new bedrock. And the bedrock are these principles. They can be called other things, but we call them the principles. So let us for a moment, go in and explore some of the tools in this toolbox, and I'll just walk you through them. And then, so the first tool is called concentration, which I'm sure we're all familiar with. It's the stilling of the mind and a one-pointed focus. And this is a necessary preparation and requirement for all meditation. So the practice of coming into resonance with the heart and the mind through an act of focused stillness. I'm not sure how it is for you, but I know for me to focus on something and keep my mind absolutely focused on a seed thought for longer than 15, 20 seconds without it my mind flickering, it takes practice. And then to have a mind that has no thought for 20, 25 seconds also requires practice. So often we have a thought and then we have another thought and we're jumping between thoughts and we're not able to focus. And so concentration is a way of bringing universality into the focus of the moment and being present with it. And then the next tool here is called reflective meditation. And this is the holding of a seed thought that allows us to pierce to the core of meaning through the agency of the higher mind. This is the mental stage of meditation. These are in no particular order. And so I'll go through the process later. I'm just introducing you to the tools and the toolbox. Receptive meditation. This is where we go into inner silence and become impressionable. It requires that we begin to stimulate and awaken the intuition, because the intuition is that sense which knows the invisible and can help transmit it into that part of us that can give it form. It's like the imagination. So intuition helps us sense what is seeking to be born. And another tool that surprises a number of people that it's in the toolbox is prayer. This is not the old prayer of, God, give me this because I need it, or give me that because it will make me happy. This is prayer as what we call an arrow of higher desire. And you sort of loose it from the bow of the heart. It's sent out as an appeal. And we're told that ask and you shall receive. So when we send out, when we launch into space, a desire that serves the highest good, it does have a response and it does help the field. So we're looking at prayer as a way of calling in. So the next part of the toolbox, we have imagination, which we've touched on. The process of taking an idea or an ideal from the inner realms and propelling it into action. Perhaps the most effective force in inner action we do through visualization. Jung, Einstein, Roberto Assagioli, who was the spirit behind Meditation Mount, all have said that without imagination, we couldn't evolve. We are doomed to a ceaseless round of sameness. It's like Groundhog Day forever. So imagination allows us to touch into the greater purpose of life and be a portal through which it can be expressed. And then we have affirmation, the use of the will to reinforce either an already existing or a new desired reality. Now, affirmation, it's same as energy follows thought. You can say, I am a loving person. I am a whole and loving person. I am a soul. Whatever we affirm, it's a mantra that affirms who we are. You have to be careful with this. I had a very funny experience way back many years ago when I was learning to drive. And I had a I came up with a mantra which I was going to use through all my driving lessons and when I took my driving test. And it says, I said, I can drive with skill and care. And I was very proud of that. And so the first time I showed up for my driving lesson, I was nervous. And guess what I said? I can drive with kill and scare. And it's like, oh, God. And so it was very difficult not to think of that from now on or from then on. So I'm just saying that these things are powerful. So when we really affirm something, we declare that it is so. So be careful what you ask for, as they say. Now, invocation and evocation, the synthesized action of our whole being to call down something higher, that's the invocation, invocare, to call in. And the response from above or the universe is evocative. It responds. Ask and you shall receive. Invocation, evocation. And then the last one here is the creation of a complete thought form, which we build by a balanced fusion of thought, feeling, imagination, and will. And this is like the Boeing airplane. It was conceived of in the mind, it was transferred into the digital design, and then those designs were manifested in aluminum, and other materials, assembled, and then you had a complete airplane. You had a complete thought form, and it flies. So let's wrap this up with the final slide for today. So the utilization of thought forms. Why do we build these thought forms? They're for the benefit of humanity on two levels. One, on an inner level, we can radiate telepathically. We can send out qualities and these seed ideas into the ethers so that they saturate, if you like, the psychological climate of the world and can give a positive charge to the environment. You know that when you walk into a room where something bad has just happened, things feel heavy. You walk around the planet at the moment, it feels a little heavy. There are pockets where people are very hopeful and saying, we will work through this. We will create a future that is much better than what we have now. We take responsibility for it. And in order to do that, you have to mobilize all your forces. So it's one thing to have a seed thought, to magnetize it. You then need to do one of two things. Choose whether you're going to launch it just as a way of saturating the psychological climate with more positive ions so that people, when they have an idea, that idea is birthed inside a space which is more conducive. The soil conditions are more conducive. Or you can decide, no, this needs to be brought into form. And this could be the beginning of a project, a neighborhood project. It could be anything that brings what you want to have happen into reality. And so what we've described is the telepathic radiation of blessing out the energies, qualities, or the seed ideas into the subtle realms surrounding the earth so that they may infuse the spiritual biosphere with new possibilities and help create the right conditions for our deepest aspirations to be realized and manifested concrete. We then take it to the next differently. So let's come out of the slides, back to each other, and take a breath together. Some of you may be familiar with the Alice Bailey books, the blue books as we refer to them. One of those books is called A Treatise on White Magic. And it's a wonderful exposition. It's deep, but what it does, explain explain is how you bring things to birth. Asks of ourselves, the artist of life. And if you wish, you can read the book over time and digest it. I'll offer you a summary, a distillation of the book in 3 words. Potency produces precipitation. Goes back to energy follows thought. When we magnetize something, at some point, it becomes so radioactive, so attractive, that it calls all the elements to it, and it shows up, it precipitates as a form. So what happens when it rains? You all know the water cycle. Moisture is taken up from the oceans, it goes up into the sky, it forms as clouds, the clouds build, and they reach a point of density, a point of precipitation, and then they rain. And the water comes back down. And you are familiar with Patanjali's The Rain Cloud of Knowable Things. There is a point in our evolution when we have access to that rain cloud of knowable things, and when we can precipitate what we wish to have happen on earth for the betterment and for the good of all through our combined thoughts. I want to say that it isn't just the mind. One of the most important organs that is engaged in creative meditation is the heart, for me. Because the heart holds everything in love, so that when we create something, it's infused with a love of life, a love for all. And so if I just use my mind, I'm in danger of creating something that could be sterile, and it may not have the richness that it deserves if it doesn't have a working partnership, hand in hand, heart and mind combined. So I'd like to read something I wrote a few years ago when I was reflecting on creative meditation and said, well, how can I explain it? And I thought, okay, here's one way of explaining it as an artist. So let me read what this is. It's called Shaping the Future. We shape the needed thought forms of a new world waiting to be born out of the stuff of dreams that live within the heart and mind of Gaia. Like an artist takes the clay of earth and shapes it with skillful fingers on the turning potter's wheel to bring forth a form that is of use and of beauty, so on those deep levels of consciousness, we shape the substance of the planetary dream with the subtle hands of our collective imagination upon the turning wheel of time, so that new possibilities may emerge. The form, however, is not fully complete until it has danced in the fire. The potter places the newly shaped earthenware into a kiln, and only when the right temperature and duration of the firing have been reached does the form finally reveal its true glazed splendor. Likewise, it is only when the forms of our creative imagination are placed in the sacrificial fire of a higher purpose and tested in the crucible of daily life that the inner work is finished and the beauty of our labor is revealed. So let's take a few moments just to drink this in. And also, some of you have posted on the chat and I will continue to check if there's any input there that I can read on your behalf. The main thing today that I'm inviting us to understand is that we have the power through focusing our intent, mobilizing our resources to create a new world together. And that new world has to start with us. Start with our family, start with our workplace, start with our community, as we all know. It's like in gardening, my background being organic gardening. One way, a friend of mine was on a huge reforestation project in the Sahara Desert. And he's like, well, the question is, well, how do you do that? Well, you start off by creating little areas like microclimates. And then you create another microclimate nearby. And that suddenly changes the overall climate. And they start to interact. And over a while, you affect a larger environment. What I believe is happening upon the planet at the moment are there are different microclimates or microclimates of goodness that are being created. Microclimates of hope. And microclimates where we are willing to face the consequences of our past actions, which we call the shadow. And it's all the things we've been experiencing with Black Lives Matter, social injustice, unrest. All of that is our shadow collectively that we need to face. At the same time as facing the past, unless we do anything different, the past is bound to repeat itself, which is why we're saying that creative meditation, particularly on the principles, is a way of putting in place the inner architecture that guarantees that the next society that we create together is one that is infused with deeper qualities. So it really is at that level. It's a global task that we're undertaking. And in the coming months, I'd like us to explore that in more detail. We actually are in the 2-month period where we're focused on the principle of unanimity. Every 2 months, we move from one principle to one pathway. And I went through that last time, so I won't repeat that cycle. But inside the principle of essential divinity, we focus on the sacredness of the inner. Goodwill, it's about bringing love. And during this 2-month period, we've got 1 month left, is unanimity. And so what I invite us to do in a moment is to actually go in and to envision a world where there is unity. Unanimity is a pre-existing condition of coherence, resonance, and harmony. And yet we have got to create our version of it so that it can correspond, it can co-resonate with that true principle. The way we give birth to a principle is to live it. And the way that we create unity is to have that start inside ourselves with the community of our own being, coming to terms with ourselves, coming to terms with those around us, and dreaming together, and then daring to step into the unknown together. And yet, on one level, it's not unknown. I believe, just like the seed contains the promise of the flower, the promise of who we truly are lives in the heart of our human family. And so it is known deeply as an ideal, as a possibility. What we haven't done yet is realize it. We haven't revealed it. And so part of the building of a new civilization is creating the conditions where the true beauty and splendor of what it means to be human can show up as part of the overall ecosystem of Gaia, so that we are not the be all and end all as a species. We are part of the creative meditation that is the life of the planet. So I wanted to take it to a different level, a different dimension. It said the soul is constantly in meditation. It's always meditating. And so when we can still ourselves, bring ourselves online with the soul, we get a download of wisdom, we get a download of love, we get a download of inspiration. And what we're learning to do is to do this collectively. So it could be 20 people, it could be 50 people, it could be 1,000 people coming together to build the future by envisioning it, and then build the future by creating the right conditions in which this future seed can grow. So that, in a very general way, is what we're about at Meditation Mount. You can go to meditationmount.org and look at some of the materials there, and we'll explore more in other weeks to come. But I didn't want this to be a sort of a presentation, even though I presented a lot of things. It was more of a musing. Let's muse through this together. And that's the other thing, is that we mustn't forget that there are the muses that can inspire us in creating this new civilization. We know there's the muses of music and epic poetry and dance. We're familiar with the Greek, the 9 Greek muses. And so I believe that this new civilization is not just an engineering experiment. It actually is an amusing experiment. We are using the muses to bring through the beauty. It's the renaissance of the human soul, of the collective soul, that we are witnessing. And at the moment, when we look around, we don't see too many signs of it. We see the collapsing of structures that no longer serve. And that's what we have to deal with. So to complete this time together, we said 45 minutes today. We had an hour last time. We're just trying to find out what is the right time. Is it half an hour? Could even be 5 minutes. But here we are in the now. And the now is our only access point to eternity. So let's be present for ourselves and for each other, and bring ourselves to a point of stillness in the heart. And feel the beat of your heart as it pumps the blood around your body. And sense the beat of your soul as it circulates love throughout your being. And now let's link again, heart to heart to heart, creating a unified field of love. And our many hearts beat as one heart. And we can both visualize and sense what happens when we widen the circle and we link heart to heart with all members of the human family. It's a stretch, and yet the heart is extremely elastic and expansive. So let us stretch and allow our heart to encompass and be connected with our brothers and sisters, comprising the full cultural rainbow of our humanity. We are one. We are united. Register what this feels like inside your cells, your atoms. What is the experience in your blood and bones of unity? What feelings live in your heart as we stand connected as one human family? And what vision is being held inside the collective mind? That sees unity. And by affirming that we are one, we create a positive charge in the atmosphere that makes it easier for others to understand that beyond the veil of separation, there is only unity. So let's bring ourselves gently out of this meditative space. And one way to continue this as a practice is that for the rest of the day and for tomorrow and for every other day, whenever we meet someone, not only do we see the connection between the two of us, but we also see that we share a common connectivity. We are part of a human web that is part of a greater web of life that we know as the sacred ecosystem of Gaia. So it gives richness to our meetings. So whenever we meet, maybe even imagine behind the person, the living planet. So we practice the art of saturating the ethers with a new reality that then becomes so potent that it precipitates and is amplified through how we live our lives together. So the plan is in 1 month's time, on Sunday, August the 16th, we'll gather again for another exploration. We're going to be holding it at 1 o'clock Pacific Daylight Time again. This was an experiment to see if this would help our friends and colleagues in Australasia and Europe participate. So we're trying to find a convenient sweet spot in time where as many people as possible can come together. So I could look at the clock and say, well, 45 minutes, we must be finished. But the only way I know we finished is when I check inside, and I feel complete with us. And I feel that we've only just begun. And the possibilities of what we can do together are so glorious, but it's going to require all of our effort, all of our focus, all of our heart, everything. Are we willing to do that? Blessings. Thank you so much for joining us at Meditation Mount. Be well, be safe, be one.